Hi, everyone. I am Lisa, the Mountain Mermaid, and your creative adventure guide for all things doodling. Thanks so much for being here. And today I'm here with Sadelle Wiltshire of Tangle, Vermont, and SadelleWiltshire.com. And she's going to share a little bit about her musings adventure and her artwork with us. So, Sadelle, thanks so much for being here. It's great to get to chat with you. And why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your creative life?
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. It's great to be here. I guess I've always dabbled in things artistic or art related pretty much all my life. But oh gosh, I want to say this has gone back 30 years now. My initial forays into art making and art, I'd been teaching art for probably 30 years. In some way or another, but it was mostly in the fiber arts. And I had this amazing experience about maybe 30 years ago where I was teaching at a fiber camp, and we were doing freeform knitting, and there was something, it was a very small group, and we just got into this space where we were passing our artwork from one person to the other, and everybody was adding on to it, and it became this like healing circle. And ever since then, I have wanted to do more and more work around art and healing and contemplative. I use my artwork in a contemplative and meditative manner. And for me, it's just a way to kind of ground myself every day and center myself. And that has mushroomed into... It mushroomed not just from fiber, but I started going back to drawing, and I had dabbled with Celtic knotwork years ago, and then I want to say it was thanks to about 7 years ago becoming a certified zentangle teacher, learning that meditative method of drawing brought me back into experimenting with other methods of drawing, and shortly before I had taken the zentangle seminar, I had taken a course on Celtic knotwork, and I found it very difficult to learn the way it was presented. And I was fascinated, though, with the lines and the weaving of the bands, and I wanted to make it easier for people to learn. And so at last, after going on a pilgrimage to Iona and Skye in Scotland, I became obsessed again with Celtic knots, and last winter just threw myself into research into finding really the best methods to present it. Not just the best methods, but numerous methods, because we all learn differently. And so again, using this as a way to ground yourself and center yourself.
I love that, Sadelle. That is so cool. And I know you started using the Daily Musings Journal earlier this year for a practice with the knots, and I would love to share that with folks. That would be awesome.
I'd be glad to. So, yes, your journal is just absolutely fabulous, and here's my copy.
Yay!
And I'm really loving it. And when it arrived about the time that I was getting involved more on Instagram, and I was noticing people doing this 100 days project, 100 days of this, 100 days of that. And I thought, I've been doing all these large form knotwork pieces, that it would be really nice to bring it back and just do it as a daily practice, but doing it much smaller. And so I thought, I'm going to do 100 days of knotwork.
That's great.
Let me see if I can, I'm going to go switch my screen really quick here. And
I love this. Will give people a great view of the journals. Oh yes, I can see it very well, Sadelle. This is great.
So this kind of marks it. It was sometime in May that I decided to start this. You see these bands up here are actually similar to a technique that I taught in Kyla Gibhan's the Black and White Journal course that is running right now. But I did a very, very simple way of weaving and knotting bands. But I decided to use each of these squares as just, okay, I'm going to do one kind of knot. And first they were knots that looked like, oh, I haven't tried that one. That looks difficult. So like, so I tried that one. And then I decided to play around with freeform knot work. And then I've been teaching 2 classes on Skillshare, and I'm adding more in a Celtic knot work. Celtic knots made super simple. And so I thought, okay, I'll go back to, these were 2 examples for those classes. So it gave me
that sounds so fun.
It was great to have a place to practice, but it's also been great for me to have like little things I can take a picture of and stick on Instagram on a daily basis. And so it was kind of it became a multi-purpose function having this book, because I didn't have to make big pieces of art for my Instagram photos. It was great daily practice. So I'll just do a little flip through. So this was the first week, really, that you're looking at here.
Cool. Hey, Sadelle, do you have a, I know people can see it on the hashtag Musings Adventure, but do you have a particular hashtag you used for this so people could go and see you or see these squares on Instagram if they want?
Yes. They could look at 100 Days of Knot Work would be one of them, or Knot Work with Sadelle. And
okay.
Yeah, and it's Sadelle.
Yeah, and I'll make sure I put that kind of on the video so people can find it, and I'll list it on YouTube when I put it up there.
Okay, great. And while most of these are not zentangle, I often also tag it Tangle Vermont.
Okay, great.
So then I was playing with color, and I was playing with other techniques. This was the second Skillshare class is all about hearts and pretzel knots. So you'll see a lot of heart-shaped things showing up in places.
I love the way you added it to the month, the name of the month. That's great.
Oh yeah. I thought that would be fun. I was just like, I want to doodle a little bit here, and then bringing back. It's interesting because in Zentangle we kind of poo-poo the word doodle a lot, or at least we're taught to. But now I'm realizing I'm beginning to reaffirm the use of it.
Well,
there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, doodles. And it's interesting that you say that, Sadelle, because I looked up the word doodle a little while ago. Yeah, and if you want to just keep flipping through that. Okay. And one of the definitions that I found was a minor work. And I was like, I love that. That's so perfect, because it's not, it's minor in that it's tiny and it's something that you kind of do relatively quickly, but it's not like it has any definition of lines being a certain way, or it includes letters or not, or it's realistic or it's not, because in my Daily Musings Journal, I do little tiny sketches, but I still consider those doodles.
Right. And so here I've done like a combination of playing with black and white and playing with watercolor. But as I progress into this, you will see, actually here I started incorporating doodles. Mm-hmm. And what was really interesting is that if you look at something like the Book of Kells or the Book of Durrow or the Lindisfarne Gospels, these ancient manuscripts, let me know if you lose me again, because the internet's getting a little wonky here. But you'll notice if you look at some of the close-ups, you will see what look like simple doodles, like these tiny little dots. Yeah, they come up all the time in Celtic knotwork. Let me see if I can. So I started incorporating some of those. And I also started incorporating some zentangle around it, or playing with just like these 3 were just done in pencil with shading.
Oh, they're beautiful, Sadelle. Really, really nice. So I was
so here the dots, simple as an ornament,
Very cool. So this is great. So people can learn how to I love that people can learn from you how to make some of these knots with your classes, and I'll be sure to link to your Skillshare, or I'll be linking to your website. You'll tell me the best place to link so people can find you and find these classes. So I'd love to know a little bit about how is this format, has this been different for you? Well, I guess you kind of told us. So this allowed you to create daily a little meditative art practice rather than bigger work? Because you said you do some bigger work as well.
I do. I have, I can switch back to, I'll stop the screen sharing here. This is actually a copy, but this is a piece. Oh, everybody's getting a full preview here because I haven't posted the full piece yet on Skillshare. I'm not on Skillshare, on Instagram and in my book, but I don't know if you can see it. But
oh, wow, yeah.
It's not finished by all means, but if you look over here, I'm starting to add some tangling.
The knots and zentangles are not.
Yeah.
And it's a labyrinth, yeah?
It's a labyrinth, yep.
God, that is gorgeous. So pretty.
So this is a work in progress. This is over a month.
Well, thank you for the sneak peek. I love it. That's really great.
But yeah, I typically work, a lot of my knot work has been larger. And so this is, and when I do that, it takes me forever. I mean, it'll take me hours and hours to do a piece. So I thought, all right, how can I bring this in and make this a little smaller, give me practice, and kind of it forces me to just work in a small space. And so that's been the beauty of working in this format. And
it worked out, and it's really cool to see another way that people people use the Daily Musings Journal, and artists using the Daily Musings Journal as kind of a daily practice and to kind of get ideas and to practice yourself. I mean, everyone who wants to get better at something has to practice. And so that gives you a little, a small space format to kind of practice more regularly is what it seems like.
Yeah. And actually, I had a question for you about the journal. So
sure.
I found that using watercolor has been hard for me because sometimes, because it's great as a drawing journal, but sometimes it leaks through the back. And so I was wondering, when you do this in your journal, do you gesso the squares?
I don't. I just let it. I mean, my pages get a little ripply. And I think for this, the watercolor, this is all, watercolor. A lot of my sketches are watercolor now this year, but I try not to get it too wet so it doesn't go through. And even if it goes through a little bit, it'll dry again. I mean, if you this is both sides, like this page and then, this page. But it's definitely not watercolor paper. It's a nice 80-pound opaque stock.
Right.
And so you have to be a little careful if you're using water media, but since it's a journal like this, I actually kind of this is how fat it's gotten. I mean, this is this last little bit is the end of the year, and which I can't believe it's already almost September, but you can see where I have quite a few ripples, but I guess it doesn't bother me. So,
well, no, you see that and it's like, it's an indication of pages I should probably open up and look at again.
Right.
There was stuff going on there. So I would just say, using water media, it works, but it's not a water media specific paper. So you do have to be a little careful and try and go a little bit dry, probably drier than you might on a watercolor paper, a thicker watercolor paper. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway.
But no, I love the format. I love the fact that the squares are laid out across a spread. So sometimes I'll actually link, like this week, I'm doing a spread where I'm doing different knots in each square and I'm linking them. I'm knotting them together.
I love that. So that's one of the things here. I'll just show you. That's a quick sneak peek of this week because I was so busy. I've done that before. And I do that when kind of the week gets away from me a little bit. I'll link the pages together and just write I don't even know what happened or something like that. And it just kind of brings me back to where I'll write small, but I want to do something graphic. So I'll put it, visual. So I'll put it across the squares so that, so I do that as a way of kind of bringing the week together if I don't get to work in it every single day, so I think that's great. I'll look forward to seeing that.
Yeah. I'll be posting it soon, probably the end of this week or next week.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, great. Well, Sadelle, thank you so much. It has been great talking with you and getting to see your work and what you're up to with your knots and tangles and other artwork. And So I'll be sharing this soon, and I'll make sure that I have all the links to Sadelle, so you can find her and her classes if you're interested in this knot work, because I think it's super fun. And I think that's great that you're teaching it in a way that makes it more accessible for people to try and learn how to make those knots. Because I mean, they look so complex, and I know that, I mean, some of them are really complex, but I know there's got to be ways to be able to teach it so you kind of understand how the knots work, right? So yeah, so thanks again.
Yeah.
Thanks again so much for being here. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Okay.